Welcome back to Ride the Stream. We are in the midst of season two of Lost, episode three. I am Travis, and I'm here with my favorite partner in crime, Michelle, as we talk about the episode called Orientation.
Mhm.
Michelle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. We're supposed to have some more hot weather. We're in another hot spell, I guess, here in Arizona. So I'm glad to be indoors. Very happy for the technology that is known as air conditioning. How about you? You get your
We've
fan
had some,
going.
yeah, still have my fan going. Had some cooler days, but a little bit of rain, and just trying to uh, do the best I can. Uh, Kids go back to school next week. Megan is back to school this week, so it's felt a little hectic trying to get all my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this episode. I know last week we talked about a little bit of repetitiveness seemed to alter the winning formula of the show, and it seems to have kicked back into gear in this episode. And if you're ready, we can just roll right into it.
Let's roll that beautiful beam footage.
Let me pull up my synopsis. And here we go. Jen warns Michael and Sawyer about the others on the beach, and one of those others uses a large stick to beat the hell out of all three of them. They're dragged in nets by several others and then dropped into a hole with a wooden mesh door above them to lock them in, while Michael asks about the boy. And I've hold on, let me to all of our viewers out there, I've already messed up. I was just reading random notes. So my apologies. Maybe we'll clip this in post and I'll start again. Um, let's see. In season two, episode three, called Orientation, Jen, Michael, and Sawyer are beaten silly by a big man with a big stick. Then they're dragged through the jungle by several people and then dumped into a hole. Eventually, another person, Anna Lucia, is dumped into the hole with them, and they share how they were all on the flight, but she was in the back end that split off mid-flight. But wait, there's more, because once she discovers Sawyer has a gun, she takes it, punches him, and has the big guy drop a rope and pull her up. Oh, and by the way, he asks who they are, which makes us wonder who she and the others are and why they've taken our lovable survivor hostages. Uh, Back to the hatch, Kate makes her way to the armory, loads a shotgun, and then whacks Desmond in the back, but he fires off a shot and hits a computer. Seeing this, Desmond freaks out and says, "We're all going to die." He begins to frantically search for parts to fix the computer, while Jack wants nothing more than to point a gun at him. Locke and Kate agree that Saeed would be helpful in fixing the computer, so she runs off for help. Despite Jack's disbelief that the computer is going to save the world, Desmond tells them to watch the tape. They find a tape titled Orientation, and they watch and learn that they are in Station 3, also known as the Swan, and that they are to enter a code into the computer, and somehow this, I'm assuming, relates to this unique electromagnetic fluctuations on that part of the island. Jack thinks it's all a scam and that they experimented on Desmond to see if he'd push a button. When Desmond fixes the computer, it actually blows out the power and the computer smokes. So he realizes the gig is up and grabs a bag, packs some rations, and makes a run for it. Jack follows. He eventually catches up with him, points a gun at him. Again, really, Jack? And screams at Desmond that nothing is going to happen and that it's not real. Desmond finally remembers Jack from running in the stadium and asks him about the woman he thought he failed. Jack said he married her, but is upset, so Desmond assumes that means he's no longer married to her. Desmond tells him the code and that he can shoot him if he wants, but he's leaving. Fortunately, Saeed does show up. He works on the computer, and while Kate and Hurley search for the breaker to flip the switch, and when the switch is flipped, the computer works again. John knows he has to enter a code and starts saying them aloud, but Hurley's in the room, recognizes his cursed numbers, and tells him to stop. But then John says one of the numbers wrong, and then Hurley's like, "Oh no, go ahead, do it. You're okay. You haven't entered in the numbers correctly." But then Jack appears, corrects the mistake, and that Desmond told him what the numbers were. John asks Jack to push the code in because it's a two-person job and that he doesn't want to do it alone. Jack continues to argue that nothing will happen, but John asks why he's there and why it's so hard to believe it's real. And when Jack shouts back why John finds it so easy, Locke shouts, "It's never been easy." Eventually, with 1 second left to spare, Jack hits the execute button to enter the numbers. The countdown goes back to 108 minutes, and Locke says he'll take the first shift. Oh, and by the way, the flashbacks are all about John and his obsession with watching his father's house while finding Helen, who he falls in love with. His father tells him to get over it because he's not wanted, while Helen tells him to take a leap of faith to move forward in his life. So, yeah, it's safe to say it's never been easy for John. And that's the episode minus the foobar at the beginning. So, orientation, Michelle,
Mhm.
what were your thoughts with this episode? Did it feel different coming off of last week's episode?
Yeah, it did. It definitely felt that it was back to the familiar episode formula. Um, Although I would say I felt like while we got all the tension, more questions, I'm not sure that we got a whole lot answered this time. And I do feel like we ended up with a lot more questions by the end of the episode than answers, which of course would mean, hey, you got to watch next week.
Totally.
Yeah, I know that I thought it was so I found a couple of the themes interesting. One, obviously, the focus on the psychological studies mention with the mention of you know, a famed psychologist Skinner who did experiments, I think back in the 50s or 60s, maybe. Um, and giving this study that is giving a person kind of a dire purpose to focus on and studying how they handle it. And as well as that exploration of faith, taking it on kind of face value and not really trying to use science to necessarily study it and understand it from the perspective of the people that are actually participating versus the psychologists that are studying, because obviously they're kind of in control. But, with these kind of studies, it makes it seems like the participants have a certain amount of engagement and buy-in and responsibility to what's going on in the study. When in fact, Jack does spend a lot of time voicing the kind of rational thought. He's that rational voice in the experimentation or in the experiment versus John, who is more faith driven. And we understand now through flashbacks a bit more why he is that way. And he seems to be a bit more susceptible to that kind of way of responding to this kind of situation. Even Desmond, if we remember back to the flashback, what in the first episode of this season, where he talks about miracles and things like that. So he also seems to be a bit more predisposition to a faith base, taking it on face value, and taking that leap of faith, even though you might not know all the facts. And so I thought that exploration of themes was actually very interesting. And it's definitely one that we've explored in the first season. So, we're back to, having a discussion about that. And that's, I'm going to say, the primary theme. But I'm also, in watching this episode, felt a bit confused by who are the others. Again, kind of thinking Lord of the Flies, the kind of the literature base of their presence. But then if you structure it around the concept of experiments, then this is a different kind of, I'm going to say, ecosystem, and that maybe there is another, station two is actually studying the social constructs and how people interact, or the utopian social environment, or whatever. So it did kind of open up and made me think about maybe the island's a petri dish, and we
Yeah.
have like five different locales, and they're all, you know, um, studying different concepts, whether it's weather, and they give a long list in the orientation film. So I didn't even think about, um, the fact that maybe there might be other survivors on the island, other than the construct that we've had others on the island for at least 15 years, which kind of makes sense because the film leads you to believe that it was made like around early 1980s, because the study originated in 1970 by the graduate students. So if you
Yeah.
think, okay, 80s, this is now 2005, so you're talking 25 years. So if you put the clock back, it kind of would make sense that it's possible, and the technology looks older, but obviously advanced for 1980, when we were just, I think, later in the year getting, like Apple II, PC 286, and, stuff like that that became more personal, and in the household. So, but getting back to the fact that I hadn't thought about there might be other survivors from the flight. And I don't necessarily think that maybe there are survivors from the flight. When she turned on them, I was like, is she really from Flight 815? Or is she one of the others and knows enough to kind of like emulate that she's a survivor when in fact she's not? Or is she being used by this group of others, and this is her survival technique, is to interact with our trio of boys in the pit, you know, not sure. Um,
So the
the other,
confusing thing about that is
Mhm.
the aspect of, I think the season one finale is when Jack met her in the airport.
I did wonder about that, if that was her, but I didn't
And
have a chance to go back and look and see.
so it raised the question of like w- what's the what's going on, because um she seemed surprised about the flight, but then what do you trust when she clocks Sawyer, takes the gun and keeps him in the, so it's
Yeah,
uh it like I think you were alluding to, it's really difficult to understand like what's going on in that moment.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think the last thing for me, initial thoughts with regards to the episode, is that it was great to see Katie Siegel again from Married with Children, in the role of Helen. It was so nice to
great.
see her again. It was like, oh yeah, that's kind of comforting to, get to see her again and interact. I thought she and Terry Quinn, great together. Chemistry's there, just really
Absolutely.
great, believable scenes between them. And then, it's funny, I also thought about seeing Saeed and the fact that I miss seeing him. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of his story and seeing more of him in in the episodes to come. Yeah, I couldn't believe how much I actually missed his presence on the screen.
He's such a likable person. Like,
Mhm.
um, I know we hashed it out in the first season where, he clearly had a different role as someone who had previously uh, tortured or whatever. But deep down, he just seems like softy is not the right word, but he's so, I think, so good natured.
Yeah.
And uh, again, I think he has just a headed nature about him that he just seems clearly like he could easily be the leader of the group. Um, and I think everyone would be fine. So I completely agree. Great to see him. And again, the brief snippets of Hurley again, and he's funny. Um, like, oh, he sees Saeed, he helps him with the trunk, or whatever luggage it is, and he's like, oh, it's good to kind of get back to normal. And then Kate comes running through the jungle. He's like, oh, crap,
Yeah.
because she's screaming for help, and
Yeah,
uh,
it's like, oh, crud. What's happening now? And of course, he knows where she's coming from. So, he's singing out, shit, what's happening now? Can't we just have a normal day? Just kind of a, nice, calm day. No.
yeah, that reminds me of a quote I think in the movie Twister where Bill Paxton's character says to Helen Hunt's character, like, why can't we just have a normal day together? And that's kind of their life on the island. Like, there's always um, some semblance of chaos or mystery. Um, uh, and something I noted in this episode, Jack was he seemed very manic and screamy in this episode. Um,
Yeah.
and so he seemed to get super frustrated with not only Locke, with Desmond too. Um, and I
Yeah.
know Locke pointed out, like, are you so upset because he recognized you? And and does that bring up the reminder of his wife that he fixed? I don't know, but I was wondering if you had an inkling to or noticed how probably at least half the episode he seemed like he was screaming that nothing was going to happen and pointing the gun and uh
Yeah, it made me think of actually, you know, um, Shakespeare says, in one of his plays, methinks thou protest too much. And just, I was trying to understand Jack too, because he seemed extremely frustrated. Um, and he seemed very frustrated by the fact that Desmond actually recognized him. So I'm like, what's going on there? What are you trying to hide, Jack? Because I felt like there was definitely he's trying to hide something or not think about something. Obviously, there seems to be some sort of pain surrounding the marriage, and we've seen the flashback of him navigating his concerns and hesitation of getting married. Um, and whether he really deserved all the adoration that she has for him. So yeah, I'm kind of like, what happened from that time when he kind of seemed committed to being on the island and rediscovering Desmond? It sounds like it was only 3 years. So what happened in those 3 years? Or does Desmond think it was 3 years and it's really longer than that? Jack didn't say. The time
yeah.
seems to be very questionable and whether you can really rely on it. Um, But like you, I felt like Jack was really like out of his comfort zone and just really reactive. And for the person that should be grace under pressure and really be able to handle it, I felt like he's trying so hard to be rational that he wasn't really rational. And the person that really kind of saw things from outside is Saeed. He's like, okay, your argument, irrelevant. We just need to get this working.
Yeah.
That's the problem at hand. We need to get the computer working. Then after that, when we're done with this stressful situation, we can go back and analyze it. And that's almost scientific, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you watch the experiments, you do that, and then you go back and you have a discussion and you talk about cause effect. What are the root problems? Okay. What does that mean? How do we resolve that if it causes is an effect that you're concerned about, and evaluating and stuff like that. And I really feel like he was more that voice of reason than Jack was, which is what we've had in the past. And we've seen Jack kind of like fall off the rationality wagon, so to speak, when he's seeing his, having visions of his father on the island and, what all that meant to him. And the fact that it's John that helps him to kind of navigate and get through that and understand the significance. So it's interesting that Jack is so hard on John again. That again, they're at odds, and we're seeing them representing two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, so very interesting. What is it going to mean? What's its significance? That I'm very curious. And numbers have been kind of important. Obviously, the sequence of six numbers for Hurley, the fact that they were on the outside of the hatch, it's the code to reset the clock. Now I'm like, well, what's the 108? What's the
Yeah.
significance? Why 108? You know, why is it that every 108 minutes somebody's got to insert that code? That makes it very hard. But I can also see why it was a two-person shift job,
Absolutely.
because otherwise, how do you get any sleep? If you're having to wake up every 108 minutes. So,
Yeah. And on that note, we'll be right back after a quick break. Hey everyone, this is Travis with Redstream. Just want to say thanks for joining our video. If you can, like and subscribe. Really does give us a boost to see new subscribers. And today, just to interrupt this video, we just want to say for Lost, who is your favorite character? We're in season 2 right now, so there's been quite a few changes throughout the first and second season. So, do you have a favorite character, or is there a character you'd like to see more of? Just drop that in the comments below. Again, thank you for taking time to listen to Michelle and I chat about Lost season 2, and we'll get back to the conversation. All right, bye. And we're back. We were talking about Saeed. And I will say, even in the brief moments that he was on this episode, he was still up there on my list of like um, just how likable he is and favorite performances. But I would like to jump to my third question. If
okay.
you're new to the show, we do questions of favorite scene, favorite character, and then we have a third one that we'll randomly throw in there. And this one is based upon Desmond's performance.
Hmm.
Did you ultimately believe what Desmond was saying and that there would be something bad that happened when the countdown hit 0?
Did I drink the Kool-Aid? Um, no,
Okay.
not necessarily. I I'm kind of in the Jack camp. I not necessarily the way he vehemently argued against it.
Yeah.
Um, I just, with what we know about the Dharma experiment or Dharma initiative, I was immediately kind of in the conspiracy theorist camp, maybe, or at least thinking that there's definitely more to it. Um, so I didn't necessarily think that something bad was going to happen if the code didn't get in there, but I
Right.
think it was, yeah, I think it's its own experiment to see how they'd react if they didn't, you know, get the number punched in time. And I think something would possibly happen, but not earth shattering end of civilization. I think that was implanted as part of the experiment,
Yeah.
right?
I
Cecily agrees.
yeah. I really liked Saeed's rationale. Because, you know, we learn in within Locke's flashbacks like how much I mean, you couldn't think it'd get any worse than having your kidney taken. Um, but what his father says to him is awful. And so when he's talking to Jack, or he's pleading to an empty room at first, he doesn't know what he's supposed to do. And, I think he's ultimately just wanting someone to believe him and not let him be the only one trying to figure it out. So I liked Saeed was like, I see a countdown. I see a computer that needs to be fixed, and I'm sure you'll tell me all about it when it's all settled. Like, I liked that
Yeah,
he was just like, okay, I see a countdown. Countdowns usually aren't good. Like, in the frame of like threats go. And
yeah.
so I really appreciated his point of view. And I think that it's pretty incredible that Saeed has that level of trust with Locke,
Hmm.
um, despite, the whole, with hiding the hatch, um, and Saeed trying to figure out if Locke is the one who, spoiler alert, killed Booth. Um, and
Oh,
so
you mean Boone?
Boone, yes, thank you.
Hmm.
And I I appreciate that Saeed's just like, look, I see there's a problem in front of me. Let me help figure it out. Then you can fill me in. Like, and I
Yeah,
think that's what Locke was hoping to get from Jack. Um, and it does make me wonder, well, why does Jack ultimately press the button? Maybe it's peer pressure. Because Kate's even saying, why don't you just do it? And Saeed's like, it doesn't matter. Just press the button. Like, who cares? Like,
yeah.
so it is interesting that he does ultimately push the button too.
Yeah, because I mean, it behooves pushing the button because that is the known. The known is that when you push the button, it resets the clock. That is a known fact. We've seen it. What isn't known is what would happen if you don't push the button.
Right.
You know, um, yeah, I do like how Saeed is the kind of calming factor in all of that. I definitely like that, but I think ultimately, the fact remains. I don't think the threat is necessarily there, but I think John needs to believe in things, and I think that he needs to have answers. And that was one of the things that I took away from when his dad gets in the car with him. And, John just, excuse me, yeah, John just wants to know why.
Yeah.
That's really all he wants to know. And it's as simple as the fact is his dad saying that there is no why. There is no answer to why. It's just a con. You just happen to be there. You happen to be ripe for the con. And you got taken. That's what it is. That's the answer, really. is
Yeah.
that he just happened to be the one. Um, so, and the fact that Helen is telling him that you just kind of have to take things, in faith, kind of is her way of trying to help him get past the grief of his missing kidney, the
Yeah.
grief of his mom and his supposed bio dad, you know, pulling a fast one on him. And ultimately, how do you rationalize when society says mother, dad should always love kids, should always have the best interest of their child
Yeah.
at the core of a familial relationship. And then you don't get that. You get this extremely dysfunctional family unit. And how do you come to terms with it? And sometimes you just can't. And you just have to move forward. You can't let it get you bogged down that you don't move at all,
Yeah.
and you just get stuck in a vicious cycle that doesn't help you. And I think that's what Helen's trying to explain. She said she spent 20 years being angry. She has her
Long
own
time.
situation. Yeah, that's a very long time. And look at what happened with Rousseau on the island. She spent, what, 16 years, stewing and trying to understand what was going on, what happened to her son, who is now 16 years old or however old he is. Um, yeah, sometimes you have to let it go and
Yeah.
you just have to move forward. And I think that, thinking about it, that's kind of how Saeed kind of deals with the situation. Well, I've got the computer, I've got a countdown, we've got a button to push. That's the basic things,
Yeah.
you know, a chain reaction, a cause to an effect. And that's very rational. Um, but we know that Jack is not always very rational when it comes to John, and they've butted heads about faith. And I think Jack is still dealing with whatever he's dealing with. I just don't think we've had clarity on that point.
Yeah.
Same with Kate. I mean, I think Kate, might be further along in her, I'm going to say recovery. Okay. Um, Recovery and moving on than maybe Jack is. Maybe Jack's is so recent that it's like the band-aid's pulled off and you still have a scabby, that you're trying to heal.
Yeah. And
What, and do you believe? Not believe?
um I was I am still struck by uh the actor, I can't think of his name at the moment, who plays Desmond.
Oh,
It,
Henry Ian Cusick.
s- Such a great performance. To me, he believes
Oh yeah.
that, they are screwed and, he's and and I think I look at John, who ultimate trust, as you said, was broken with his parents. And so why it's never been easy is because he has to like believe in people even though he's had like that ultimate trust broken. Um
Yeah.
and and when Jack says you believe him, and John's like, well, his word is all we have to go on. Like, um and there's whether or not it is true, I like I would look at Desmond and I'm like, well, he believes it. Like, there's no,
Yeah.
it would, I think it would sway me in that moment to try to help fix the computer in some way. So yeah, and but even in that sense of Desmond being frantic, he still has a sense of, I don't know, there's a sense of, I don't know if it's calm or level-headedness. Like when he's talking to Jack after he's run about with a bag trying to get away, and he remembers Jack, and he just calmly kind of asks about like, well, what happened with the girl that you thought you failed,
Hmm.
um, and when he sees that Jack is upset when he says that he married her, he's like, oh, so it didn't work out. And
Hmm.
Jack looks like he kind of like nods in agreement that they're no longer together.
He
Um,
tears up. He's pretty emotional.
yeah.
Like he's really trying to hold back a breakdown, an emotional breakdown right there.
And Desmond just as frantic as he was trying to fix the computer, he's able to kind of get an understanding of what Jack's going through to a degree. And like he could be frantic, say, no, 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 don't shoot me, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, well, I can't control what you're gonna do.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. I really liked his performance in this episode. Um, and I think I only listed two people on my list as uh favorite characters. Um,
Oh, so who are your two?
um, I'll mention my two.
Hmm.
And do you want to go first with saying who your favorite is, or do you want me to go?
I can go because I
Um,
think this person's probably one of your two. I think John. I think,
yeah,
it a lot was on John. I think Jack was pretty emotional, but I have to give it to John just because, in part, because of the flashbacks and just kind of his dealing with this entire situation through the episode, I think really just rests on John. Um, yeah.
yeah. He was my Desmond and John were my two
Hmm.
that I just put on my list based on what they did, and um, like I wanted to give it to the new guy, but I I agree with you. Like I think Locke is so vulnerable in this episode where like when he's talking to Jack at the end and he is beside himself telling Jack that like something like I wrote a lot of the quotes down from this episode. Um and he says to him, I can't do this alone, Jack. I don't want to. And he's like very emotional in that moment. And then he tells Jack what Helen told him, that it's a leap of faith. Um, and like you said earlier, that's where he's kind of learned, I guess, to trust in people and maybe move forward, is because that's how he has survived to not be stuck. Um, and just seeing him like Terry Quinn, good Lord, his performance. I know you've said it before. It's like they made John Locke's character for him to play.
Hmm.
And it absolutely is true. So he's my favorite character of the episode. You know, I even, copied what his father said to him because I mean, you thought this guy was a slimy POS before.
Yep.
But I mean, uh, if you don't mind, because it's so awful. Um, when John asks why in the flashback, and
Hmm.
his uh he says there is no why. You think you're the first person who ever got conned? You needed a father figure and I needed a kidney. And that's what happened. Get over it. And John, don't come back. You're not wanted. I mean, throw that on top of the fact that he says it's annoying to see him out there. It's just, oh, I can't imagine. Uh, well,
And
that's not
he
true.
moved. He mentions that he had moved,
Yeah,
figuring that that would shake John off his tail, and it didn't. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, what did you think was going to happen when you just, perform that con on somebody who was looking for a father figure, who thought he got the father that he'd been missing his entire life? What did you
yeah,
expect? At least John didn't go postal on him,
yeah.
uh, but, he is looking for answers and trying to understand why him. Because it wasn't just his mom, it's this other person. Is he really his dad? Who knows? We have to think that maybe he was because of the fact that it's the biologically the kidney transplant, donor was a match, but
And there was some kind of like DNA test, I think, with the when he hired a detective or something like that.
mm-hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when he says to Jack, it's never been easy, it's like, and you see the sequences that he's had, it's totally believable that him believing in anything is never easy because how do you
And
trust people when, like you said, the people who are supposed to love you the most?
mhm.
Yeah,
And we haven't talked about it recently, but as a reminder, um, we saw in the flashback that John was in a wheelchair. He had, been in some sort of accident that he no longer had the use of his legs. So that kind of adds to the complexity because, Jack keeps saying, so this is your destiny, this is your destiny, this island, this bunker is your destiny. Is this what you thought you were getting into?
yeah.
And we don't hear that answer. We don't know what that answer is for John as yet.
And it makes sense that he's so frustrated, I guess, at the island when he's like he doesn't know what to do because like the island in a sense, he got his legs back.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, and whether it's destiny or something else, like I don't even know, but um when then the path leading here, as Jack was saying to him, and he doesn't know what that means. Obviously, that's frustrating because he's like, well, he gave me this, and then, the island, I think he said, demanded a sacrifice, which was Boone.
Yeah.
So it's like this give and take thing. So I guess Locke is really just trying to figure out how to move forward on the island. It seemed simple at first because he had the gift of walking again. Um, but as we've learned, there's many mysteries, and then questions galore uh, that we yet have answers to. Um, now, with that being said, uh, we have our favorite character. Was there a particular sequence or moment that you thought was your favorite from the episode?
Well, I'm going to defer and have you go first
Ooh.
because I do have kind of a favorite and an alternate. So if you pick the scene I'm thinking maybe might pick, then I'll go with my alternate.
Um, so I again listed two. Um, I'll say my top one.
Okay.
Um, and it is the scene between John and Jack. But it's not just because it's between John and Jack. John is also being vulnerable in front of Kate and Saeed and
Mm-hmm.
Hurley
Mm-hmm.
and saying it's never been easy and how he doesn't want to do it alone. And he's saying that to Jack. And I mean, I guess he could technically say that, like, hey, I don't want to do this alone, Saeed or Kate or Hurley. We do this with me.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, I maybe because Jack is the quote unquote leader, um, and I don't know if there's some symbolic reason for him to need Jack specifically. But you see it on his face. Like he doesn't want to be alone um and maybe if he feels like if Jack agrees to do it, then he's not crazy for believing in it. Um and so just for the emotional output alone from Terry O'Quinn um is incredible. And then just trying to decipher whatever reasoning he has with needing Jack to push the button. Because he brings up a fair point. Why did you come back? Why did
Mm-hmm.
you come to tell me the correct number? Like, you've gone that far, why not push the button? Like, so I really like that scene, um, because despite the animosity, Jack does come back
Mm-hmm.
and helps. And I feel like there's been so much tension between them that because I can't remember. I'm hoping that kind of like, you know, calms things down between them a little bit. Um, or the next episode, who knows, Jack just gets pissed for caving and blames John for everything.
Maybe.
But that's my top scene. What about you?
So that was also my top scene. I would say, but I'll talk about my alternate here in a moment. The thing about to me that I read from that particular scene is that it comes down to in Christianity, they say the road less traveled, take the road less traveled. It's not the easy road, it's the more difficult. So I kind of read into that while, you've got Kate and you've got, well, Hurley is already voiced that he would not push the button. Um, so he's kind of firmly planted that he is, I'm going to label him non-believer, and he's not going to be swayed. And at the end, does John really need to have Hurley moved into the camp of faith? And he doesn't necessarily. Um, Kate could push the button, and I think Saeed would, but I think it comes down to the one that's on the fence is the one that you really want to kind of have in your camp because they already there's already something there that can bind you. There's a commonality. There are common threads there. Um, and I think ultimately, I think that John really does need to have Jack there in in the camp. I think he really needs to have Jack push the button because that is validating. Um, because if you can sway the one that most vehemently opposes, um, then you can turn around and say, well, he agreed to it, just like you said. And as Jack being kind of the symbolic leader of the group, yeah, you need to have him on your side. And just like John said, he's got to have Saeed on his side. And when he and Boone talked, you don't want Saeed not on your side. And he already knows that he's got Saeed, you know.
Yeah.
So I think the next person is Jack. And not to belittle Hurley's place within this small ecosystem of survivors, but he brings something else. And at this moment in time, that's not what John is looking for. Um, and it really is a thin line between Jack and his science and taking things on faith, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that Desmond kind of represents some of that, taking some things on faith. So something traumatic, I think, happened with Jack and the woman that he married. I think something happened there. So I'm sure we'll find out down the road in a flashback what happened and why Jack isn't ready to deal with that.
Yeah.
My honorable mention scene is actually the one where John and Jack sit down and watch the orientation film. In the orientation film, you get pretty much all of it, but there are definitely jumps in the film, like it breaks and well, it doesn't break, but the dialogue breaks.
Yeah.
Um, and so all we get from John and Jack are their facial expressions that react to watching this film. And it really does say a lot. Just the fact that they're both able to express how they're taking in that information. Jack is obviously the critic, non-believing, a suspect, thinking this is not rational, who would possibly do this, you know, um, versus John, who is just like, here's my purpose, here's my higher calling, here's where my next focus is. He got into the bunker. Now, what's my next challenge? What's my next job?
Yeah.
What is my next focus? And now John knows. Here's the light. You're gonna have to push that button every 108 minutes, But he has a purpose, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah. So that's why I went with why I thought that was so cool because they don't say anything and it's all written on their faces. So I thought that was a great scene.
I should have had that on my list. I don't know why I didn't. It's such a fun scene, like, because it breaks up the normal
Mhm.
jungle slash hatch, and you got this kind of like dated film that's colored like in amber or whatever, and it's really fun to kind of take a different step in the story that way.
Mhm.
Um, the other item or sequence I had on my list was the one where Helen helps John at the end by
Mhm.
chucking his keys over over the fence. Um, but essentially, she's like pulling him off the ledge, the figuratively speaking,
Yeah.
because he's stuck there, and he, like you said again, can't move forward. And she's like, "You can move forward, and I can help you, and we can move forward together." And seeing her words come back to our top scene, the leap of faith, I think is great. Um,
Mhm.
because it shows that John can learn to move forward. Um, I think you're right that maybe he is, and maybe Desmond are susceptible to believing things, and maybe that's because of XYZ that they've been hurt so bad before that they want to believe in whatever's good or what have you. And so maybe now that he did it once with Helen, it made it easier for him to jump, have the leap of faith for everything else. And maybe that's why he's susceptible to be like, yeah, we got to push the button. Like
Mhm.
this is where we were led, and it makes sense. And um, but yeah, that scene, the whole episode, I mean, their chemistry, like you mentioned, is great.
Mhm.
Um, I love he blows up at the group meeting and
Oh
she
my
kind of
gosh.
thanks him afterwards because she's wanted to do the same thing forever um and just it's such a good scene. They're cute together. And she like the comment like, "Oh, I like bald men." He's like, "Well, I'm not bald." She's like, "I can wait." Like that's so great. Like
There was
I don't
some
know. I
great
just
dialogue between them that,
yeah.
who the writers again show how great they are at writing wonderful dialogue and twisting it to something that you wouldn't expect. Like, when she said that he's bald, that she loves bald men or whatever her statement is, and and his retort, oh, I'm bald. Oh, I can wait. I love that. I love that. And her choosing not to speak out at the meeting, because he says, "Oh, well, why didn't you ever?" "Oh, I got to keep a cork on it. Otherwise, that'll just open a floodgate." Um, it was also kind of telling for her that maybe she's actually still either dealing with or she's chosen to let it go and move on and not revisit it. It's not
Yeah.
helpful to revisit it. I don't know. There's some depth there as well. So hopefully we'll see her again down the road in some other flashbacks. So that would be fun because it was great to see her.
It really is amazing like whoever they've cast and the people in the scenes together have this chemistry. I mean,
Hmm.
whether the character is despicable or not, like thinking of Jack's father and his
Yeah.
awful moments, like they still, for whatever reason, banter and mesh well on screen together. In this instance, uh, Helen is a delight to be kind of like Russo. Like you want to see her on screen.
Yeah.
You don't want to see Jack's father. You don't want to see John's father.
Oh,
Uh,
I know. As soon as I saw him, I'm like, I don't
yeah.
like you.
Um, but I've learned. I guess that's the spot on as like filling a role
Hmm.
excellently. Like he he makes you despise him. Like so.
Just bringing it all on, not phoning it in. Like they all have, belief in the series and what they can bring to that role. And it's like they understand the memo, and they
Yeah.
just they deliver. Even like I said, Ian, but Ian, Henry Ian Kuzak. Um, even he brings it, like he kind of treads this different line and understands the timeline and where he might be mentally after being on the island for 3 years by himself, probably, and
Yeah.
believing that, comes to believe that there's this ticking time bomb somewhere that is going to destroy him if he doesn't hit the button. And he becomes comfortable with that because it's familiar. I think that's
Yeah.
the other thing is the fact that you get in a cycle of familiarity, and that's more comforting than to go out on take that leap of faith into the unknown, because you're more comfortable being where you're at because it's familiar to you versus maybe taking that leap and finding something even better or something worse. It's the risk. So,
Yeah. And the fact that he's survive for however long, knowing he's had to be awake every 108 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to end.
I think
Uh,
so.
to everyone watching, or if you have it on, you're listening, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Uh, we are Ride to Stream covering Lost, but we'll be coming up with some new things in the near future, so stay tuned for that. And until then, I guess we will see you on the flip side.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone.